It happened in 70 AD, 40 years after he said it. That generation did not pass before it happened. Now, Revelation looks like it's about the same thing, though of course it wouldn't have to be. The end of the world could be described in terms similar to the end of Jerusalem, but that's what we're looking into. The partial preterist believes that Revelation is talking about the same thing that the Olivet Discourse is talking about. It is talking about the destruction of Israel and the temple and Jerusalem and the old order, which is replaced by the new covenant order. Now, of course, the thing that makes this difficult for most people, the ones who don't believe it, is the kinds of things that are described as taking place. You see all the sea turning to blood and every fish in it dying and every ship being destroyed in it in Revelation. You see every mountain moved out of its place and every island disappearing in Revelation. You see stars falling from the sky like figs from a ripe fig tree, ripe figs from a fig tree. You see hailstones of 100 pounds pelting the earth. You see all kinds of interesting things like that, which people would reasonably say, that hasn't happened. I think I would have heard of that if that happened. Well, it hasn't literally happened. The question is whether you're supposed to take the book of Revelation literally or not. And you'll never be open to any view of Revelation other than the futurist view if you think that you're supposed to take the book literally. Because although those things have not literally happened, a futurist could say, well, they're going to happen. And who can prove them wrong? Who can say what's going to happen not? I mean, still, the things that are described there, they'd be amazing and even unlikely to happen unless God determined they're going to happen. But anything could happen in the future, supposedly. So the futurist view doesn't worry about taking it symbolically, although all the other views do. The preterist, the historicist, and the idealist views have always taken the symbols or the vision symbolically. By the way, the preterist and the idealist and the historicist views have been more prominent in church history. They've been held more consistently than the futurist view has, although the futurist view is better known today. So we can be very provincial if we think, well, everybody believes in the futurist view. Well, maybe the people in your church, in your denomination, all of them do. But historically, that has not been the case, because historically, Christians have recognized symbolism in prophecy, and so should you. I mean, everyone knows that Daniel is a prophet that's kind of similar to Revelation. Most people recognize that Revelation represents many of the issues in Daniel, but Daniel, nobody takes literally. I mean, think about it. Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar sees a vision or a dream of an image with a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, and legs of iron, feet of iron and clay, and a stone that strikes the image in the feet, topples it, and then the stone grows into a great mountain to fill the earth. Now, there's not a person I know on earth who believes that there's a literal image with a head of gold and so forth that's being described there. In fact, they'd be very foolish to think that, because Daniel interprets it for us. So we have the inspired interpretation of that dream, and the head of gold represents the Babylonian Empire. The chest of silver represents the Medo-Persian Empire. The belly of bronze, the Grecian Empire, and the legs, the Roman Empire, and the stone, the kingdom of God. Now, the Babylonian Empire is not literally a golden head of a statue. And it's a symbol. The metals of the statue are symbolic of these empires. Everyone knows that, though they sometimes don't realize they know that. There's many people say, well, we just take the Bible literally because God says what he means and means what he says. Yeah, well, he does, but he doesn't always say it literally. He says it often in symbolic visions and dreams. Daniel had a dream later on in chapter 7 where he saw 4 beasts coming out of the sea. One was like a lion, one was like a bear, one was like a leopard, one was a ferocious beast with 10 horns. Now, if you take that literally, we're talking about real animals coming out of the real ocean. But nobody really believes he's talking about that. The interpretation is given it. Again, it refers to the Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Grecian, and the Roman empires. And so in chapter 8 of Daniel, you've got Alexander the Great's kingdom represented as a he-goat with a single horn, like a unicorn, whereas the Medo-Persian Empire is referred to as a ram with two horns. Now, again, nobody who's studied Daniel, who knows anything and has been paying attention, believes that those are real animals. Those are symbolic. The animals symbolize things. Now, when you come to Revelation, you've got a very similar situation. You've got a beast that comes out of the sea with the mouth of a lion and feet of a bear and a body of a leopard and has 7 heads and 10 horns. Is there really an animal like that the Revelation is describing, or is it symbolic like Daniel? Well, obviously it's symbolic. You won't find anybody who believes a real animal that fits that description is going to emerge from the sea and rule over the world. Even the most literal translators typically want to make that into a person, the Antichrist, the beast. But he's not described as a person, he's described as an animal. That's symbolic, is it not? Jesus is described throughout the book of Revelation as a lamb. And one description of him, the first one in Revelation 5:6, says he's a lamb with 7 eyes and 7 horns. Now that's symbolic. Jesus isn't a lamb, literally. He's a man. He doesn't have 7 eyes on his head. He doesn't have 7 horns on his head. That's symbolic. And anybody who's familiar with prophetic language should know that. The dragon also is Satan, but he's also called a serpent. 2 different things. Is Satan a dragon or is he a serpent? Well, he's neither, literally. He's a spirit. He's not a reptile. He's not a mythical beast. He's not a dinosaur. He's a spirit, but he's represented as a dragon and a serpent and so forth. So Revelation is full of symbolism, and that's just something we have to live with, or else ignore the book. Now, the question is not, is it symbolic or is it literal? Obviously, it's symbolic. The question is, what does it symbolize? When you recognize any prophecy as symbolic, well, you're not even halfway to recognize what it's about. You have to ask, what do these symbols represent? And in Revelation, there are literally hundreds, I think it's over 500, I forget the exact number, of symbols that are borrowed from Old Testament books. They're borrowed from Daniel, they're borrowed from Zechariah, they're borrowed from Ezekiel, they're borrowed from Joel, they're borrowed from the Exodus. And someone has referred to the book of Revelation as a rebirth of images, taking images from Old Testament symbolic visions and prophecies and putting them together in a new way to, again, not to be taken any more literally than those things were taken when they first appeared in the Old Testament books they're taken from. Literally, they are, representing, international issues, wars and disasters, and the rise and fall of kingdoms and so forth. That's what these images always mean. And to say that they don't mean those things in Revelation, but they really mean, something very literal, is to say, we recognize it's symbolic in all these other books where these images found, but in Revelation, we've got to take that literally. Well, what argument can be made for that? Well, why would that be proper? You see, the preterists and the historicists and the idealists all take the book of Revelation symbolically, and you know what? So do the futurists. They don't admit that they do, because there's not a futurist in the world who believes there will be a real animal emerging from the ocean that fits the description of the beast. They believe it's a man. Others believe it's a kingdom. Some have believed, like the reformers, believed it referred to the papacy. It's symbolic for something, but everyone has to agree it's not literal. So we got to go into it knowing that. The question then is, what is being represented there?